When a threat is too great for one hero, an entire team is called on to deal with it. As the threats grow, so does the Alliance, adding new members to their ranks. But if a danger looms so great that one expansive team is insufficient, it may well require two. Provided they don't start punching each other first.
Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and we close out Year of the Crossover with what may be the biggest collision of heroes to date, as I'm taking issue with JLA Avengers. Scribed by Kurt Busiek, with art by George Perez and Tom Smith, will this story be one for the ages, or end up as just another sales gimmick? Let's kick this off with issue number 1, and see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads.
The cover for each issue is a wraparound, fitting for such a titanic meetup of characters. Here on the front, we see each team's big three and one of their size changers. As we move along, we see even more of each group, all looking in the same direction with varying expressions of concern. Well, except for Plastic Man, he's reacting to the background featuring Starro and the armored Terminus.
They were all sharing derogatory impressions of Starro, and boy, are they going to be embarrassed when they turn around.
The story begins on the planet Polemicus, where an atmosphere of revelry is attributed to a man named Archon ascending to the Imperial throne. He's getting geared up to go hunting when he's alerted by his vizier of a disturbance from the skies. An amorphous black entity with glowing red eyes bellows a command, wanting to know some manner of secret, but receives no answer. So it extends its tendril-like extremities and eventually destroys the planet. Polemicus dies, and a universe dies with it.
Because they didn't answer a question? Jeez, game shows these days are really trying to get those ratings.
In another universe, on a different vibratory plane of existence, the Weaponers Accord are fighting the Crime Syndicate of America, the evil versions of the JLA, who happened to find the planet because one of them was bored and decided to wreck their stuff for fun. As their speedster suggests leaving just enough behind so the Quardians can rebuild, and they can destroy it again, the entity appears before them, repeating its question about the secret truth. Superwoman replies only with a threat, and yet another universe bites the dust.
You think when that reality's Warner Brothers Studios decided to make an Ultraman film, they completely diverged from him and made it all bright and hopeful and positive?
We get a splash page of a humanoid being seemingly comprised of the cosmos itself. This is Eternity, a manifestation of the Marvel Universe, and it holds another galaxy in its hand. And even though I'm not familiar with Eternity, I think the white backdrop here helps emphasize that this being is far more complex than what a standard comic may offer. Anyway, we zoom in on this galaxy until we come upon Endwygast, the Grand Master, who's waiting on the outcome of his latest wager when the dark entity again demands answers to his questions. Narration notes the words aren't words, but a kind of energy probe spreading throughout the universe. Though initially struck by the commanding voice, Grandmaster realizes the probe is damaging the fabric of creation, so calls the entity out to ask what it wants. Perhaps perplexed by this recalcitrance, the probe recedes and the entity takes on a more humanoid form. I seek the ultimate truth. I am Krona, and I will not be denied.
And you look nothing like Jeff Goldblum!
A month goes by, and the JLA are in a fight against Terminus, the giant armored villain we saw on the cover. And if he can knock aside Superman that easily, he probably isn't a pushover. Some Leaguers are trying to restrain the threat, while others help evacuate pedestrians. We're barely even slowing it down. We'll lose this shopping center in minutes.
Won't someone please think of the capitalism?
The creature appeared without warning, near Fallville, Iowa. It paused, seemed to scent the air, and began marching directly towards Metropolis, destroying everything in its path. Sheesh, even villains from different realities know which DC city they really want to target. Batman is busy analyzing the creature as it targets local police with its staff. After Superman takes the resultant energy blast, Bats determines the weapon is the source of its power, which feels like a bit of a stretch. It's not exactly explained how he determines that. He calls for a telepathic link-up of the League so he can coordinate their attacks. Blinded by Plastic Man, Terminus opens his helmet to scoff at their attempt to take his staff, but this leaves him open to a psionic attack from Martian Manhunter. He can't really read his mind, but he can do some damage. When the foe charges his weapon in retaliation, Green Lantern uses a construct to redirect the energy back at him.
Well, looks like someone brushed up on their Looney Tunes strategy before this fight. Sure, it's a bit flashier and more complicated than what we've seen Bugs Bunny do, but the principle is basically the same.
The League need not be concerned with the hows and whys of Terminus's presence, as the Spectre, which at this time was Hal Jordan, says the villain is from another plane of existence, and personally handles disposing of it. Not sure if he's just taking it back to the Marvel Universe or outright terminating Terminus. Anyway, everyone is apparently so in awe of the sight, their old comrade being God's hand of vengeance and all, that Wonder Woman needs to remind them there's still people that need rescuing. Meanwhile, in the old 616, Starro is dropping its assimilating offspring upon New York, barely fended off by the Avengers. At least the ones not being controlled. Attacking the source creature isn't having much effect, and things don't exactly become much better when Thor gets assimilated. With a little teamwork, they manage to free Quicksilver, who says the self-styled Star Conqueror wants nothing short of total control. He's in such frightful awe of the calm, ordered hive mind he was just a part of, he doesn't see a way of stopping it. Vision, however, has an idea.
Scare it away using tartar sauce. What? They already used one cartoon trope against one villain. This could easily work. You don't know. You're not science.
Since the creature seems to work on some kind of order, he plans to apply one to Scarlet Witch's face, since she utilizes chaos magic. Though there is objection from her brother. But she's your ex-wife, Vision!
Why would you take a dangerous alien creature and stick it onto the face of your ex-wife who... And on second thought, I think I just answered my own question.
As the star creature is attached, Wanda taps into her world's chaos magic, funneling it into the hive mind and driving Starro away in fear. With the possessed people now free, though with an unpleasant taste in their mouths, Wanda notes how the creature felt out of place, and it's then that Vision gets a transmission.
If it's another telemarketer, tell them we're off-planet, fighting the Skrulls and the Phoenix.
We have used that excuse before.
I don't care if we've used that excuse before!
No, it's their buddy Quasar, whom they contact at Avengers Mansion. While at a deep space monitoring station, he's noticed peculiar invasions on numerous planets, including but not limited to Lobo attacking the Shi'ar, and, well, I can't tell who these aliens with ray guns are supposed to be, but in any event, it seems all these sudden arrivals originate from the same alternate universe. While Cap and Thor carry on that conversation, and other Avengers deal with cleaning up the evil starfish, Wasp confers with Iron Man about early detection of these increased interdimensional threats. We jump to the Flash, clutching a piece of Terminus's armor while going super speed, trying to match its vibrational frequency to reach its home reality and gather some intel. Wally's a bit nervous, since this was always more Barry's shtick and the resistance is intense, and it doesn't help that he loses psychic contact with Jean. But he perseveres, and eventually arrives at a quaint river town that he takes as an alternate version of Keystone City. He begins molecular scans when he hears a cry for help. Turns out a mob of people are attacking a young mutant. He just changed today, as he pleads with people he's known for a while that he's no threat. The Scarlet Speedster stands between the mob and the kid, telling them unless he's actually committed a crime, they need to back off. Instead of listening to reason, they figure the Flash is another mutant, possibly in league with Magneto, and decide to take him out too. Letting the teenager bound away, Flash tries to hold them off, but trips. No, this isn't written by someone from the Flash TV show, because that's probably something that would happen. He's lost his connection to the Speed Force, as the irrational townsfolk close in.
I'm a still curious why they didn't think he was with the Avengers or one of the other powered but not mutant heroes of that world. Do they think Iron Man, Thor, or Captain America would have been A-okay with them lynching some poor kid? Morons!
Thanagar is fighting off Skrulls, Mongol is tangling with some brood, and the JLA is monitoring things from their watchtower, and can't make heads or tails of any of it without more information. But man, is that some awesome reception from across the universe. That's when Flash calls in from Keystone, a bit battered but alive. After his powers faded, he returned to his normal vibration, then popped back to his rightful Earth, though still shaken by the sheer loathing of his attackers. Don't mess with angry Rotarians.
For those that may not know what he's talking about, Rotarians refer to members of the Rotary International, or the Rotary Club, which is a non-profit with the intention of uniting business and professional leaders to advance peace and goodwill across the world. I'm not sure if the joke has some layer I'm not getting, or maybe I just don't find it funny.
Couple of things I noticed about this page. You have two portions here, one outlined in yellow, one outlined in red, and it seems to indicate that you're supposed to read the yellow portion before the red. But because I'm used to reading comics just left to right, and that's how the dialogue and the panels tend to go, it kind of threw me for a loop there. It's not necessarily a bad choice, just one that surprised me. I thought it was a little weird. What's more weird is Plastic Man making extra heads from other portions of his body to look at the hollow screens. Is he goofing off, or can he actually see through those heads? Anyway, there's no time to elaborate on Wally's trauma, as an alarm sounds, indicating a new visitor for the League. Uatu the Watcher. Jean's mental probes only discern that the being is curious. No responses to questions in various languages. While Aquaman would be fine putting on a spacesuit and forcing a conversation, Superman's heightened senses detect another arrival, that of the Grand Master. While mentioning that the bald spaceman hardly ever interferes, he gets Batman's version of hospitality, courtesy of an energy cage from Lantern. Grandy says he's going to tell them of their impending peril, but for the third consecutive time, Jean finds himself unable to read a strange visitor's mind, so they can't confirm his claims. Good thing Diana has that magic lasso. Old Man Gast explains that the barrier between their dimensions has weakened, to Wally's shock, and left unattended, that spells doom for both. The solution is to gather 6 powerful artifacts from each universe, totaling 12, many of which the League recognizes as they're displayed by the blue newcomer.
Interdimensional scavenger hunt!
I guess the bell, wheel, and jar all count as one set. That or Grand Master stinks at math. Bats and Jean want more information, such as the cause of the crisis, who will wield these combined items of power, and how, but Gast isn't saying. He implants in their minds the location of each item for both universes, then vanishes, warning that others will be seeking the totems as well. Wonder Woman assures that he spoke the truth, though admits there was some withholding of information, which I didn't think he could do with the lasso, but I guess Gas is just that powerful. Bats doesn't much like the idea of going on a mission based on a stranger's orders, possibly, Flash notes, because someone else is making the call. Still, we are being invaded by this other world, and believe me, from what I saw, it's not a nice place.
I can make that determination because I spent 5 minutes in one small town and got beat up by a bunch of people. Now, that's the kind of logic you might find on the Flash TV show.
Since Flash can't go back to that world without losing his powers, he'll keep an eye on Uatu while Adam joins the field team. He sets up a vibrational field to transfer to the team, and once matching the Marvel vs. frequency, the League is off. At Avengers Mansion, Tony is working on a dimensional alarm, something he'd planned to build eventually anyway, and has worked up something that can detect Starro's energy signature derived from Jack of Hearts' Scanalyzing, which may be a comic book exclusive word for that specific character, but it still sounds weird. Cap walks in, having alerted reserve and inactive Avengers, along with Hawkeye, because who knows if the other realities Robin Hood will show up. And that's when Stark's new alarm sounds, and it is certainly not a test. The JLA is going from Moon to Earth, splitting up, mind-linked, and instructed by Batman to observe unseen, not to interfere under any circumstances, something he almost annoyingly reiterates while the team watches Doctor Doom rule over Latveria, see the devastation of the annihilated Genosha because its inhabitants were mutants, or the Hulk smashing and snacking in Michigan. Meanwhile, Bats and Plastic Man are in New York, and catch the Punisher taking out some drug dealers.
And certainly the Dark Knight will be able to contain himself. I'm just kidding. He's currently in the process of kicking Frank Castle's teeth in. Did you know he teamed up with Jean-Paul Valley while your back was broken?
As the team reconnoiters on an island in the Sea of Okhotsk, E.L. O'Brien wastes no time chiding Batman's 20 minutes of vigilante-beating hypocrisy. No details on if he left Punisher tied up, or he got away, or what. But as much as some leaguers like Kyle would have liked to have done something about what they saw, they're reminded there are larger concerns at work. Superman, his dialogue outlined wider and more curved than normal, decries how little it seems the world's heroes have done, given its appalling status. An outburst that leaves a few of his friends a little surprised. Supes wants them to be the ones to use the artifacts, and they can all sense the first one nearby thanks to the Grand Master. But first they have to deal with some giant monsters I don't recognize. Wonder Woman tells Bats to circumvent the beasts while the rest of the team engages, though it turns out the Atom beat him to the object. You know, I had a thought.
I could be one of your allies in Gotham. I could even change my name to the Batum. Huh? Huh? Never speak of this again. Never speak of this again.
With the monsters defeated, Batman returns with the item, which is the ultimate nullifier inside a glowing yellow orb. But he can't figure out what it is himself, so asks John to probe it. I don't know how he's supposed to telepathically scan a mechanical device, but somehow he can, realizing it can wipe out a universe on its own, a prospect so overwhelming the dread is psychically rippling into the other Leaguers. That's when an arrow snatches the device, and Iron Man fires an energy weapon at the team. Supes looks a little concerned. Maybe he thinks the green colors equal kryptonite? But Diana manages to catch the arrow before they're zapped back to their proper Earth. And Aquaman seems to take extra offense at being kicked out of a different reality. As far as Bats is concerned, they got what they needed and there's no need for a fight. Though Superman, continuing to show contempt for that other world, thinks it may come to a bigger brawl anyway, since they have 5 more powerful items to find from that world. Back on Monster Island, the Vision exposits how Tony's cannon strengthened their target's core energy patterns to return them to where they belong. So that's what the big gun did. They just didn't expect an Amazon with such incredible reflexes. Yet possessing a device that Planet Eater Galactus is scared of means they're a threat, from the Odin Son's perspective. You know, there was something familiar about them.
You know that weird feeling where you meet people from another reality and you might have had to fight them in order to save your entire universe from being destroyed, and both universes had the form of a crystalline entity, and you might have fused with them for a while? Just me?
Vision's heightened hearing detects they're being watched by someone who breathes. They head toward the cave where the nullifier was kept, with Quicksilver rushing in and getting them all ensnared in energy fields, ones even Viz can't phase out of. It's not really a trap, more of a means for calm conversation with Metron of the DCU. He's not friends with the Justice League, only there to observe the impending conflict. Then does for the Avengers what Grandmaster did for their counterparts, show them the 12 items that need collecting, half of which they already recognize. Man, where do I get a lazy boy like that? Metron adds that the League must be opposed, lest the Marvel Universe dies. Adam, watching in shrunken state, feels this is a little fishy and moves in to get closer. Thor does a mighty man flex to break everyone free, and demands from Metron where to find the Fiends. Believing the stranger to be the type to take a vow of mystery, Iron Man figures he can rig his modulator cannon to infuse the team with the other world's energy signature. Instead, Metron gives them a device and pieces out, leaving the Avengers wary of trusting him, even though, yeah, other people are after some powerful stuff. Cap asks if Tony can scan their gifted gadget, but Stark replies it's not really a gadget. It's alive and called a mother box.
She says she loves me, but is really disappointed I never finished law school and wishes I'd call more often.
In Metropolis, a gang of masked thieves, led by someone without a mask for some reason, leave a bank and head to another, since they know Superman is out on JLA business.
Hey! When I made that citywide announcement that I'd be going to another dimension for a while, I did so with the specific assumption that no one would commit any crimes in the duration. Does the honor system mean nothing to you people?
That's when the Avengers boom tube onto the scene, and while I've never been a big follower of the team or its individual members, it's still great fun seeing these crooks aim their guns at them, having no clue what they're in for. Naturally, they're quickly incapacitated and left to the police, and the Avengers take pause to note the differences between this world and their own. From Metropolis looking part modern New York, part future city, to expecting hostility, but they're instead met with an adoring public, asking for autographs and if they're with the Justice Society of America. But Cap's having none of it, reminding them they have a job to do, and they need to move out now. Wow, who jammed that star up his stripes?
Hey, give Cyclops' dad a call. Maybe it was, the Starjammers.
They later get a taste of how heroes are treated in this world, given awards, seen on TV comforting sick kids, and, to Quicksilver's surprise in particular, a museum for a certain speedster. While Hawkeye continues to ponder his nagging sense of familiarity, Cap figures the Justice League are more about running some superhero-level protection racket, demanding adoration instead of guarding freedom. Wanda seems rattled by Steve's accusation when the little tin gods in question arrive in person, in a 2-page spread of tension, probably not helped much by Superman calling their world a shambled mess, or by Plastic Man doing actual finger guns. But hey, that is funny. Hawkeye pinpoints why these guys feel so familiar, calling them Squadron Supreme wannabes, and Supes orders their surrender before the dangerous loose cannons threatens their world's safety. This seems to convince Cap of his suspicions that they're fascist overlords, while members of both teams think their respective red and blue champions are going a little overboard. Thor, not much appreciating being treated as the bad guys after the League took Marvel's stuff, chucks his Uru hammer at Superman's face.
Now fight! Clank, clank!
The funny thing is, if this interdimensional crisis had waited like a week, Thor would have finally gotten around to reading Making Friends and Influencing People.
The issue ends with the Grand Master and Metron observing the events, which are still playing out if you look closely. It's true that Krona may not abide by the terms of Grandy's wager, but it at least stalled him from further destruction, allowing a deeper game to be played. All this witnessed by the Atom.
Which brings the first issue to an end. And it was a great start, from the character interactions to the detail of the art that simply draws you in. Sure, it was weird that Martian Manhunter can apparently telepathically probe machinery, but that's about the extent of my major complaints so far. Tune in next week to see if they keep this momentum going. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I... Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with JLA Avengers. The being known as Krona has been destroying entire universes in search of a secret truth, until he encounters the Grand Master. He and the mysterious Metron swapped universes briefly to have each reality's champions search for powerful artifacts, one of which, the Ultimate Nullifier, was already retrieved by the Justice League. As the two teams came at odds over a palpable atmosphere of distrust, the Grand Master hinted at a larger game at play.
The cover is pretty straightforward, world's finest fighting Earth's mightiest, including some of each team that haven't had the pleasure of cross-dimensional travel in the story yet. What's interesting is that despite all this activity from so many characters, and that it's also raining, it never feels crowded or confusing. Excellent work by Perez and Smith. After a recap on the inside cover, we're jumped back a little to when Grandmaster first encountered Krona. Then even further as the latter explains his scientific interest in the secrets of creation. He'd even sent time probes to investigate the Big Bang, even glimpsing what's known in DC as the Hand of Creation, but this caused explosive backlash. As punishment, and in fear of a legend about destruction upon learning these truths, his fellow Owens, that's right, the Space Smurfs that started the Green Lantern Corps, let him stay immortal, but only as disembodied energy to harmlessly roam the universe forever.
Yeah, because that doesn't sound more cruel than a quick execution or some manner of rehabilitation.
Turns out there may be some truth to those old legends, because not only did Krona manage to travel to other universes, his investigations have always led to their destruction. And he ain't even sorry about it either. His quest for knowledge seems more important to him, and he'll give it another 1,000,000 tries if need be. According to Krona's dialogue, the power of those he's destroyed is now his, so I guess he gets stronger with each universe he kills? NY Gast, not wanting his reality to be destroyed since that's where he keeps all his stuff, offers a challenge, one that will grant the name of a being who was around before the Big Bang.
So not only can Krona reform himself, he can snuff out entire realities by asking questions and not getting an answer. This is harmless disembodied energy? Have Owens just always stunk at everything they do?
After a splash page of Kismet, DC's more feminine-looking cosmic being, we get a 2-pager of the League and Avengers clashing. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say it's a sight to behold. Where else are you going to get Aquaman holding his own against Iron Man? And come on, Hawkeye, Flash knows Green Arrow and has a nemesis called Captain Boomerang. No way a boomerang arrow is going to work. Batman stands between Captain America and his shield, and the two engage in some calculated grappling. And since they don't seem to acknowledge ever meeting each other before, I think it's safe to say the DC versus Marvel crossover may just be ignored here. Tough break for Axel Asher. The two strike, but with little force, more testing one another than anything else. Eventually, Bats admits the possibility of Cap beating him, though it'd take a while, and Cap admits he doesn't really want to try defeating him, as he's realized they're just pawns in someone else's game. They decide to let everyone else keep fighting while they go and investigate on the sly.
Yes, we'll work together to find out who's manipulating us. What about your crack about us being fascist dictators? We'll find those villains in no time. So no acknowledgement whatsoever that you ever said, "For America!"
And I guess no need to inform your friends and colleagues. Wanda has a bit of trouble using her chaos magic, until she manages to tap into the DC's wellspring. But it's so much more powerful than she's used to, it causes a massive shockwave, knocking back both teams. Realizing she can also detect the location of the items they need, she transports the Avengers away before the League can stop them. When Aquaman notes that Batman and Atom are missing, Superman wants to split up to look for them. Martian Manhunter disagrees, prioritizing the Avengers since they now have powerful magic on their side, on top of looking for items that could cause universal havoc. But I think his time with Mystery Incorporated just soured him on the idea of splitting up. Their errant allies are resourceful, so the League must seek the other items of power, while he telepathically calls in past and reserve JLAers to look after their world's native totems. As people gather around, Aquaman gets his kingly authority on, advising that while they head to the other Earth again, Flash stays behind to rally their forces. While he's clearly still sore that he has no speed in that other universe, but promises Kyle to get his Green Lantern battery from his apartment when he's done spinning in circles for them. And the League's return does not go unnoticed by the Avengers back on their native Earth. they're back.
You know, it's happening so often lately, I kind of wish Tony had picked a less annoying noise for the alarm system. My vote would have been for the Star Trek computer voice.
The League arrives in the Marvel version of Metropolis, a wide-open field along an interstate. Quite the contrast. Superman does a quick scan, noticing the planet is smaller, there's less urban development, and figures it's just a backwards reality, which Wonder Woman calls him out on. No time for sensitivity training, though, as they split into 3 pairs. Supes with GL, Diana with Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter with Plastic Man, to the former's annoyance, and to my delight. Meanwhile, Wasp has contacted other Avengers, told them where to expect trouble, and leaves with Yellowjacket after the less experienced triathlon monitors things from the mansion. Wally heads to Kyle's place to get his battery, only to be incapacitated by Iron Man, detecting the speedster thanks to the mother box upgrades. Hawkeye, holding the battery, takes time to gloat and exposit that Wanda can instantaneously send them where they need to be, and the Avengers vanish before Wally can tackle them. Aw man, Kyle's gonna kill me.
Well, even if he did, you'd just come back in about a year, thereby making her death utterly pointless, so I don't see why you should get so worried about it.
The two arrive in the Himalayas sans power battery, not knowing it and the ultimate nullifier have been whisked away by the Grand Master, who notes the score is tied. Superman and GL arrive in Santo Rico, noting how the Marvel Earth lacks some of their own countries, but has unique ones all their own. Superman, continuing to cast shade on this reality, looks at a damaged and graffiti-covered statue of Giant Man, and figures this is what the alleged heroes get for not being inspiring, just as Wonder Man and Warbird arrive.
Yes, we know that Superman would never have a statue of him get defaced and be accused of not being inspiring. Great, now I gotta clean that up. Where did I leave that flamethrower?
The twins Maximoff peruse the Flash Museum, Wanda's dialogue more jagged, and Pietro intrigued by the Speed Force, wondering if he can tap into it too. But their tour comes to a halt when Black Canary, Blue Beetle, and no-color prefix Hawkman swoop in. Parallel to this, Wonder Woman and Arthur arrive in Asgard, in a nondescript way, similar to how Diana gets to Mount Olympus. Too complex for mortal minds, so the writer doesn't have to explain it. Lucky! But they soon encounter She-Hulk and Hercules, the latter of whom Wendy takes an instant disliking to, since her own mythos makes him a villain to the Amazons, and she doesn't seem to care what this Herc has to say about his relationship with his world's Hippolyta. Additionally, on this 2-page spread, Superman incapacitates Warbird, Hawkman nets Scarlet Witch while her brother is felled by a sonic scream, and She-Hulk compliments Aquaman's strength, and looks, despite how outmatched he is.
Sheesh! A Witchblade-possessed Wonder Woman says she'd take him as his consort, and now Hulk's cousin is flirting mid-battle. What am I missing? Is it the hook hand? Because I can make that happen.
Ow, my foot! How'd I hit my foot? Anyway, Wonder Man almost overwhelms Lantern until Soups tosses him aside so they can get the Orb of Ra. Arthur wriggles free from the gamma-powered lawyer to enter a temple with a convenient well, where he obtains the Eternity Book. All this while Wonder Woman was seeking revenge for her mom on the alternate world version of the guy responsible. Because that seems rational. Quicksilver wakes up to find their opponents knocked out by Wanda, who struggled to control the corruption of this world's chaos magic is taxing, but she says she'll endure. They get the Wand of Watum, leaving the score 3-2 in DC's favor. The game is moving too slowly for Krona, but Gas notes that certain intricacies exist, such as how 2 players have removed themselves from the board. Those 2 happen to be in the Batcave, where Steve Rogers is probably taking in some eerie parallels looking at Jason Todd's enshrined Robin costume. You lost a partner? I did.
Did he come back to life? Yes. Take on a new identity and attack you? Yep. Did he get a cyborg arm? No. Well, 2 out of 3 is pretty close.
Oracle informs them that Zatanna's working to trace the Scarlet Witch's magic, and other heroes have been dispatched to collect the artifacts. It makes sense that the Grand Master is involved, but Bats notes how Metron is more of an explorer, not one for games like this, so his involvement is rather odd. Speaking of, he's watching Galactus take a lava dip, which I guess is part of his feeding process of an entire planet. Metron isn't quite convinced the rules of Gast's game will keep Krona in check, but he'll have to wait and see. Back at the cave, Cap notes how Grandmaster levies steep penalties against quitters of his games, and Bruce suggests they act while both cosmic gamblers are concentrated on their little bet. To that end, Steve activates a homing beacon, preceding a portal, neither of which Batman is happy about. And who would arrive but the Thing of the Fantastic Four, on a crazy-looking hover cycle.
Ben Grimm is getting in on the ground floor of a game-changing rideshare app, Interdimensional Uber.
It's actually a time bike, which Reed Richards, explaining over video chat, managed to program with wavelengths based on analysis of Metron's activity on Monster Island back in issue 1. These are part of some wheels set in motion before the Avengers showed up in Metropolis. And while I don't know why, it's really fun how Ben is being so sociable with Batman, talking his pointy ears off, and not really letting him get a word in edgewise before teleporting back to the Baxter building. And while I don't think Bat's saying he has a rough-edged charm is necessarily a knock against Ben, it's cool for Cap to mention the respect he has for the blue-eyed lug.
It doesn't seem like he was making a remark about Ben's appearance. And let's be honest, Bats is never at his best when he's criticizing the looks of someone that can't change how they look.
Though at first seeming to be just 2 separate pages is normal, there is a parallel between the events in the Himalayas and the Watchtower, so it could be argued you could still read it left to right like normal instead of just first page then second page. But I digress. While Wanda continues to contend with chaos magic, becoming more pale in the process, Tony thinks they're relying too much on magic, and wants to try utilizing the Mother Box. And Pietro still wants to harness the Speed Force. Uatu continues to creep out the Leaguers, so much so that Firestorm can't get comfortable enough to use the bathroom, while Zatanna scans chaos magic fields, wanting the teleporters ready if the Scarlet Witch uses her powers again. Steel has rigged up a harness that Wally can use to collect ambient Speed Force energy and utilize it should he need to pop into the other universe. As Superman and the others realize that something bigger must be going on, with the artifacts switching between worlds, Wanda teleports her comrades, and Zatanna alerts them to head out. Thor finds a windstorm he can't manipulate, probably because its source is Red Tornado. Fellow android Vision figures he can simply phase through and disable the Leaguer, but there seems to be something more that prevents him from doing that, something that overwhelms him. Firestorm, having already obtained the Bell Jar Wheel combo platter of artifacts, ensnares the Odin Sun in an atomic containment sphere, and they're off. And let's find a big belly burger restroom before I burst!
Since Firestorm is comprised of 2 people, could he split apart and only have to go half as badly?
Jean and Plastic Man are respectively fighting Yellowjacket and Wasp in Wakanda, and when it goes a little longer than the Martian would like, he telepathically attacks the insect-themed heroes into unconsciousness. Now they're ready to find the next artifact, the Medusa Mask, which has already been nabbed by Black Panther, watching from the treetops. 1 more point for Marvel. One thing I found odd in this page was this gradient rectangle. It seems more like a comic panel within a comic panel, but I think it's supposed to be part of the palace structure, despite how aesthetically tangential it seems to be compared to the tan and gold and blues around it. Another 2-pager is topped with Cap and Bats investigating one of the universes destroyed by Krona, and they pick up an energy trail that may lead them to Metron. After Hawkeye and Iron Man retrieve another artifact, Tony decides to go out on his own briefly. On Paradise Island, Wanda is looking more and more like the less appealing-looking kind of witch, while her brother almost makes off with another artifact, until Flash takes it from him. Within the blue area of the moon, a spot in the Marvel Universe where it has a breathable environment, Wonder Woman and Green Lantern manage to one-up Photon and Quasar, until Iron Man boom tubes with a surprise attack, allowing his cosmic comrades to grab the Spear of Destiny, tying the score again.
Man, this inter-reality conflict better not run long and preempt Bob's Burgers. It's a new episode, you monsters!
The burgeoning detective agency of Wayne and Rogers, like that guy that played Trapper John on MASH. Okay, that's too obscure. Anyway, Bats and Cap arrive at the Grand Master's game room. It kind of looks like the den of a comic book obsessed gambling addict. All it needs is that old X-Men arcade game and a Spawn-themed pachinko machine. The Atom drops in, a little frazzled by his stay since hitching a ride on Metron's chair, and leads the pair to a monitor where Grandmaster is recording his game. He plays a live feed of Marvel's Antarctica, where Aquaman notes to Superman how these alt-world heroes may seem weaker by comparison, but they persevere with the odds severely stacked against them, so they fight even harder to even things out. Soups, still being a grouch for some reason, thinks they may not be fighting hard enough, which Adam tries to explain to Cap with the old, what he really meant was, but Steve would rather just carry out his mission. So Adam rewinds the footage to the part where he really wanted to go. Guess we really needed that awkward moment. He plays the meeting of Grandmaster and Krona, verifying the stakes of their wager. If Krona wins, he'll get the name of the being that has the info he wants, and can seek the answers even if it destroys the universes. If he loses, he leaves the Marvelverse alone. Krona agrees on the condition that they swap champions, meaning the Avengers would be working on his behalf. Grandmaster begrudgingly accepts, and Cap realizes his team has to lose in order to save their reality.
Good thing this wasn't settled at the box office or we'd be dead by now. Right, Batman? Batman?
On the popular tourist hotspot Apocalypse, a few heroes from each quarreling team see Darkseid wielding the Infinity Gauntlet. You know, that thing that can reshape reality to the wearer's whim. Way to copy Marvel, DC! Though on the plus side, according to Desaad's quick analysis, the gauntlet is powerful, just not in their reality. So given his other pressing matters, Darkseid tosses it away, and throws in his Omega beams free of charge. Flash outruns Quicksilver to narrowly grab the glove before being struck, and one big teleport later, both teams are in the Savage Land. Scarlet Witch is back to normal, since she's back in her own reality, and floating above them all is the final artifact, the Cosmic Cube. Another big ol' melee breaks out, arrow to arrow, magic to magic, alien powerhouse to Nordic powerhouse, Wonder Woman to Wonder Man, because why wouldn't they have that matchup for at least one panel? And while I know zip about the character Photon, I do think it's cool that after her first fight with Green Lantern, she used that experience to match and absorb his energy. It's one element that helps keep things interesting, while Thor and Superman exchange callous remarks about each other's reality. When the Asgardian tries slamming Mjolnir on Soups, he catches it, holding back the intense power before dealing a massive right hook. Other Avengers watch in shock as the Thunderer falls to the Kryptonian's attack. Superman remarks that Thor may be the single toughest opponent he's ever faced.
What about Doomsday? You know, that creature you fought until both of you were dead?
The heavier-hitting Avengers, She-Hulk, Hercules, Iron Man, etc., played dogpile on the Kryptonian, battering him mercilessly in Thor's name, until Aquaman knocks them aside with a local sea monster, though Soups is already unconscious. Kyle Rayner has the Cosmic Cube in his sights, but is too weak and low on power to put up a defense, so he takes a gamble, recites Hal's Oath, which is just the Green Lantern Oath, but maybe there's some nuance I'm missing here, and absorbs the power from the cube, which he finds rather intense, realizing there's more to the item than he figured, though he may need to change his name to the Chrome Lantern. And Photon's having fun with his Green Lantern energy, so fun power boosts all around! Before Kyle can claim the final artifact, boom! Intercepted by Warbird. She's got the ball cube inside the ball. But what's this? A steal by the Flash! Unbelievable! But what's this? Despite his harness being on an alternate Earth, Flash isn't quite fast enough because Quicksilver comes in with a steal. And now he's gloating about being faster, mocking the Speed Force, and it's this kind of showboating that's going to turn people away from watching two realities worth of heroes fight each other to the death. Everyone's pausing. Is that a referee?
Excessive celebration by Quicksilver. Penalty to the Marvel Universe. Point and continued existence goes to DC.
It's Krona and Grandmaster deciding that the score is tied, but what's this? Captain America's mighty shield knocks it from Pietro's hand and unbelievably right into Batman's.
Did I just see that? Handing the ball over to the other team. What an upset, ladies and gentlemen. Do you believe in confusion?
Before any Avengers can retaliate, Cap orders them to stand down, so Batman can use the cube, but that's not what that's for. So Grandmaster just adds it to the DCU tally and tells Krona he lost and be along his way. And just to show you the kind of good sport he is, Krona energy blasts Grandmaster, insisting on getting the information he's wanted anyway. When he starts eye blasting gas in his eyes to get the information from his mind, both teams are rallied to separate them. Superman asking if Thor is up for a fight, and Thor basically responding, "If you can, I can." And I find that kind of awesome. Gleaning the name he wanted, Krona somehow manages to conjure up Galactus, much to his unwelcome surprise. As the heroes try to pierce an energy barrier that contains the Titanic forces, Krona demands Galactus spill his guts, but for some reason neglects to be specific with what he wants to know, and is thus dismissed as a madman. Unsatisfied, he begins attacking the Planet Eater, quite effectively, continuing to demand answers he technically hasn't asked yet. What a universe-destroying putz. The Grand Master, however, reveals that the items of power were actually for him to use, and at his whim, he, Krona, Galactus, the heroes, and Color itself are all sucked into a vortex, leaving a white nothingness behind.
Join us next time on Turner Classic Movies. Anyway, we're halfway through the story, and it's taken quite the turn, hasn't it?
I really liked the pacing here. It was very well maintained from the first issue. Nothing felt unnecessary to the plot at all. Some seeds of rivalry are sown here, mostly between Flash and Quicksilver, the latter of whom seems adamant to be faster than the fastest man alive. A little bit of Thor v Superman, Dawn of Whose Earth is Better, and a dash of Hawkeye maybe wanting to outshine Green Arrow for some reason, but nothing beyond a brief bit of dialogue. I liked the stop at Apocalypse, where Darkseid had a brief cameo. He still felt very commanding and threatening, even if he didn't do all that much.
I also noticed that the League almost immediately realized Batman and the Atom were missing, while no one on the Avengers seemed to question where Cap was. Maybe that'll lead to an awkward moment next week. Or not. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.
Excelsior!
Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with JLA Avengers. Heroes of Two Earths scrambled to collect powerful items while Batman, Captain America, and the Atom took on an investigation in the meantime. After a huge battle for the final artifact, Krona lost his wager with the Grand Master, but wasn't about to let that little detail stop him, and attacked him and Galactus for the knowledge they held. That's when N.Y. Gast uses the gathered items to draw everyone into a mysterious void. We're going into overtime, people!
Issue 3's wraparound is simply a sight to behold. Even more Avengers and Leaguers are charging ahead, this time including different designs and versions of some of the same characters. You barely notice the backdrop is completely blank, but that's probably for the best in order to take in the sheer, deserved spectacle of it all. Our story begins at the Source Wall, a cosmic phenomenon guarding untold power, which uses the enlarged husks of those who fail to get through as its exterior.
There's a joke here about walls and who's going to pay for it, but to be perfectly honest, it's lost its humor and it's just depressing at this point.
Dr. Doom is now among the imprisoned, and a classic-looking JLA can thank Hawkeye for his last-minute distraction. He apparently switched universes to be with Black Canary, and it's all gotten on Green Arrow's nerves. One strange ripple effect later, it's the same roster as before, except with the Flash, Barry Allen, in lieu of the Avenger, and a confused Oliver being the one who made that 1-in-a-million shot against Doom. As Hal Jordan takes the heroes back to their headquarters to inform their Marvel counterparts of their villain's current state, we get a splash page of the cosmic entities Eternity and Kismet making out.
If the date went that well, they must have seen a movie from the Marvel Universe.
Speaking of, some of the Avengers, this time including the X-Men's Beast, have destroyed one of Brainiac's attack ships, watching it sink from their island hydrobase. Despite the victory, Cap senses something very wrong. Wasp figures it may be interdimensional in nature, so she called in a JLA who transport nearby, because convenient timing isn't relegated to just one reality. They head inside for snacks, while shaking hands, chatting about couple stuff, science stuff, which Earth is 1 or 2 stuff, and wow, in this panel Batman hangs back between Cap and Superman, then in the next he's way ahead of them, front of the line when Jarvis mentions hors d'oeuvres. He must have been really hungry. After Ollie mutters a snide remark, he and Clint have an arrow measuring contest, while Steve Rogers continues to feel uneasy, looking at a framed picture paying homage to Justice League of America number 21.
We were holding a seance, we just summoned heroes from another reality, and Jarvis just happened to have his camera ready. No, it's too convenient!
Though Wonder Woman tells him he's dealt with these kinds of crossovers since the time of the Justice Society, he still feels it's all wrong. And that doesn't change when he's suddenly on the Watchtower at a luau-themed reunion party for both teams. Some faces and costumes have changed, but the rivalry between Barton and Queen has not. Pictures of kids are shared, Wonder's man and woman are arm wrestling, Guy Gardner is psychically told off. It's a fun time for all, except Superman brooding by a window. The Avengers seem very different to him, and one ripple later, the gathering is now at Avengers Mansion, again with different members included. Like that this Spider-Man like you kids like. And Captain America frantically insists that everything keeps changing. It's all wrong, wrong, wrong! Barry and Hal try calming him down, and for a brief moment resemble Wally and Kyle, whom Cap first encountered, and says they were the real ones.
Yeah, someone started reading DC in 1995. Though, given how similar the costumes are between Barry and Wally, I'm kind of wondering how Cap could tell the difference.
To ease Cap down, Janet tries reminding him of the times they've worked with the League in the past, fighting against allied android antagonists, rescuing kidnapped comrades, or fighting each other because of 2 time-traveling tyrants. Batman and Iron Man are called from investigating something, maybe still the dimensional shifts mentioned earlier, to a different disturbance. Their respective paragons of American ideals at each other's throats, tossing blame back and forth for the phenomena only they've noticed. Drop your phony sanctimonious pose and tell us the truth, or I'll shake it out of you! Do your worst. You're just another over-muscled, high and mighty pretty boy. I've beaten dozens like you in my time.
No offense, but I doubt you faced solar-powered demigods from beyond the stars. Superman pastiches, maybe, but come on, Steve, let's be realistic. Wait a minute.
The two lunge and collide with each other, resulting in a silent explosion that knocks everyone back and seems to shatter reality itself. I guess someone turned the universe off for 15 seconds and turned it back on again, because Vision wakes up in an unfamiliar, snowy setting of muted color, taking to the skies before seeing Aquaman emerge from water nearby. For some reason blaming the Avengers, Arthur tries punching the answers out of the machine, only to be surprised his left hand is good old-fashioned flesh and bone, not a hook or a magical water prosthesis. With both their memories less than reliable, they decide to call a truce and look around, among buildings Vision can hear filled with frightened people, until they come upon the iconic Daily Planet globe, now rubble in the streets, which at least confirms they're in Metropolis. A group of villains approach, including Bloodsport, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, and others, saying their master has made this a world without heroes, and so the two have to die. Logically, they should retreat, but nuts to logic, because Aquaman would rather punch the name of their master out of them. And Viz doesn't exactly disagree.
They're in the DC universe, there's massive devastation, frightened people, and muted colors. I think it's pretty obvious they work for Warner Brothers.
They're eventually overwhelmed, but are narrowly saved by other members from their teams. With the villains captured, Wonder Woman uses her lasso on sonar for their master's identity, but all he says is that he's trapped and plans to escape. So maybe he doesn't know who the master is? The lasso doesn't seem particularly useful in this story. Fortunately, their foes seem to resonate with some manner of power, which Mjolnir can detect and trail back to whomever they're working for. And Cap is still distrusting of the JLA and their world. We jump to the Marvel Universe, where an earthquake gave rise to a blaze that other Leaguers and Avengers work to quell while rescuing those in danger. When the fires are put out, Superman detects strange differences about the reality and behaves rather standoffishly to the Avengers. Among a crowd of people looking for answers after days of devastation is a cab driver from Korak, which doesn't exist in Marvel, so Batman figures their worlds are crossing over. And Goliath thinks that the one responsible is at the epicenter of the quakes. It begins snowing, and people start freaking the expletive out. Not because of those who might obnoxiously start singing Let It Snow, but because of the phantasmal apparitions that appear, confused, begging for help, and scaring the solid folk. Martian Manhunter attempts a psychic probe to find out what the ghosts want, but before he can vocalize an explanation, a shockwave knocks everyone back. Afterwards, the weather's cleared up, a Metropolis citizen seems to have appeared, mentioning that people vanish when the ghosts show up, and wouldn't you know it, John Jones is gone.
Wait, he can turn invisible. He may have chosen a crisis threatening two realities to decide to become a prankster.
In Metropolis, the now bearded Thor keeps back the full brunt of the snow while the group follows Mjolnir. Vision sees a funky-looking twister up ahead when the sounds of people in the surrounding structures suddenly go silent. They vanished, and okay, here's the problem with suddenly giving Thor a beard here. I thought that was him behind Captain America, and the font of his dialogue just suddenly changed for some reason. But no, it's actually Aquaman, who also has a beard and long blonde hair. It's like George Perez was trying to make me look like a fool intentionally. Specifically, me.
Perez!
An energy surge stuns the heroes, but while some people go missing, Martian Manhunter stands before them, starting to piece things together. Contacting his allies in Marvel's New York, Jean says the peculiar storm is randomly switching people between the realities, as he leads them to a barrier where the city meets Metropolis. And yet somehow Manhattan gets the Daily Planet, with a headline about Clark Kent interviewing Spider-Man that throws Soups for a loop.
It makes no sense. Why would I interview a superhero that isn't me? Unless I'm Spider-Man. Or I've been doing journalism in my sleep. Again.
The two split teams arrive on either side of the barrier, with Hal Jordan recognizing Krona's face formed upon it, surprised that he's alive. This reignites the bickering between Cap and Soups, but Emissary of Peace Wonder Woman tells them enough with the infighting already. With Jan backing her up on how two realities depend on them, Steve apologizes, not Clark though, and they start remembering Krona's tantrum at losing his bet with the Grand Master, and how Sonar said their master was trapped. The Krona barrier erupts, kicking the storm back up and causing further tremors, but at least the teams aren't blocked off anymore. Superman and Iron Man head skyward, the former using his supervision to see pieces of cities from his world popping up in locales in the other world seemingly at random, and Tony suspecting it may have to do with the differences between their realities, be it planet-sized or physical laws. As the rift energy begins slowing beyond Earth's atmosphere, Cal's suspicions are confirmed. Seen in a manner their minds can comprehend, two giant ethereal hands are forcing the two Earths into one.
When will people learn? Venn diagrams are dangerous!
Scarlet Witch unleashes her power on the Krona-looking energy, seeming to hurt it, and is backed up by Hal. When it gives them pushback, the two tap into the willpower, the very souls of their allies, giving them an added boost that results in an enormous burst of energy. We pick up some time later at Avengers Mansion, where its residents, minus one Justice League, arrive to find Jarvis a little worse for wear on the porch. Between the quakes and some looting, he got himself a broken arm, but still managed to send their food stores to local soup kitchens because he's awesome like that. Fortunately, Tony's emergency generators are still working, meaning the basement labs are operational. And Jarvis can start a pot of coffee for some impending company.
Oh, yes, super-powered people with working limbs. Please, let the average human with his arm in a sling get your caffeinated bean water.
After the rift's power was disrupted, people and places return to their natural worlds, so the League teleports over, since they can apparently do that now without Flash having to run in a circle. Maybe because the worlds are merging, I don't know. The Earths may be stable for only a brief respite. Time and space are still wonky, resulting in double star counts, gravitational distortions, and on the ground of two Earths, familiar heroes and heroines are seen in costumes of different eras, as seen by Firestorm, Hawkeye, and Wonder Woman. At least according to Iron Man, which he also notes the League didn't even flinch at.
I didn't notice much of a difference myself, but this is Tony Stark, and we know he has an eye for the ladies. On top of that, Diana is often touted as one of the most attractive women in the DCU, so he probably had incentive to pay extra attention to her. For science. Or something.
Their next course of action is to find the Grand Master, and discover how he used these items of power to do what he did. A return to the Savage Land to find an energy signal to track would take too long, so they'll have to be guided by the suddenly appearing Phantom Stranger. The two blonde beardos are a bit antagonistic at the ominous leaguer, but Superman vouches for him. Stranger opens a staircase portal and leads them through a cosmic dimension of mixed-up color palettes, along an ethereal path. Should you stray from it, you will never find your way back, nor will any who know you ever see your face again.
And nothing of value was lost.
The journey is intense on both biological and technological senses, leading to some metaphysical questions, but no sooner does Batman insist Stranger tell them what's going on do they arrive at their destination, the Grand Master's domain, where its chief resident lies dying. After Krona's attack, he tried using the items to merge the universes together, and contain Krona at their juncture. But the natural differences of the realities caused those most attuned to their native worlds, such as Clark and Steve, to react adversely, explaining why each were quick to mock or distrust the other's world. Since the verses were already complete on their own, it's causing an overload heading towards critical mass, being intensified by Krona. With the knowledge he gleaned from Galactus, he intends to create a new Big Bang, one he can experience personally, if he survives. As Goliath realizes their phantom tour guide has vanished, Gast says he's too weak to separate the worlds, and it'll be up to the heroes to stop Krona and restore the proper order. But with everyone's memories being so hazy and people swapping and changing on a dime, Captain America wisely asks, what is the proper order?
None of these.
On a 2-page spread, Avengers and Leaguers are given their histories as they were before the merge. All the good and not so good. The victories, the losses, years fed into them in a matter of seconds. Their fashion changes and terrible personal choices. The images touch on the bigger experience of the previous 20 years or so. Batman losing a Robin, Wonder Woman her mother, and Aquaman his hand. Which really looks odd from this perspective, but I guess he's seeing the screen more like this. Then there are the heroes that see their own deaths, descent into madness. You know, the light stuff. But it was showing things as they should be that exhausted the last of Grandmaster's power, and he passes away. In the uncertainty of how things will revert should they stop Krona, some of the heroes would prefer to avoid the darker moments that, to them, are still ahead. Hank Pym striking his wife, Wanda losing her children. But Hal, who saw himself driven to insanity and murder, says they can't risk changing things, choosing the easier-to-bear deaths of people they don't know. It's not their place to play God. As they agree to restore things as they were, for better and worse, the two teams are observed by Metron as they defiantly call out to Krona that both the Avengers and the Justice League of America are coming after him.
If you don't like raised fists, you're really not gonna like what we're doing now. And that brings this episode to a close. Tune in next week to find out how the story and the season comes to an end. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues. Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the final installment of JLA Avengers. After crisscrossing between universes, fighting over powerful talismans, and having their histories altered, the two teams are led to the dying Grand Master. He uses the last of his power to show them the path to properly restore their realities, through triumphs and tragedies alike. Despite the temptation to change things their way, they decide to unite against Krona's mad quest. And best of all, I can finally watch Linkar's review of this series from a few months back. I hope we didn't come up with the same jokes. What if he suddenly decided to start wearing a headband and sunglasses?
The cover has a starry background, the two Earths coming together, and standing defiantly on a mound of rocks is a battle-worn Superman, wielding Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer. It's the image you never knew you wanted to see, and it looks awesome. But a lot of that is helped by the context of the previous issues. We open to a series of monitors with the data Krona has gathered about the birth of the Marvel Universe. Specifically, that the last survivor of planet Ta merged with the sentience of the previous universe as it was ending, and when the new verse came about, that last survivor became Galactus. Krona notes how the universe was a voice, whereas in the DCU, it was created by a hand, meaning a living, thinking spirit is what creates cosmoses. And Metron asks, now what? Since Krona wields the power items not, I think that's a typo and it's supposed to be now. I mean, he's got them in the big containment orb, so... Well, the ancient Owen plans to coax out the sentient entities and force them to reveal their secrets. And if the two universes die in the process, so what? All that matters is that Krona will have his answers.
This is why you're not allowed to compete on Jeopardy!
Across both realities as they merge, buildings crumble, devastation abounds, and heroes are doing their best to save lives. Each not knowing where their mightiest super teams are, but confident they're doing their part in fighting the problem. And they will, as soon as Vision cools off after tossing aside several allies while on the JLA watchtower. He's determined to rescue the two children he didn't realize he'd ever have, but it takes Martian Manhunter's psionic influence to slow him down, which makes a little bit more sense than the ultimate nullifier thing in issue 1, but I digress. And his at-the-moment wife, Wanda, reasons that restoring things to how they were before this all started is the best course of action. Now that Viz has accepted their mission fully, they gather to strategize, Hal outlining Krona's ability to enthrall people to his whim, on top of additional defenses, and how they'll need a ship capable of taking them to his base. But when all is said and done, they'll need a capable leader to follow, and Superman nominates Captain America.
Anyone who's punched Adolf Hitler more than 200 times is more than qualified for the job.
Though their realities have certain conflicting natures, he's the ideal candidate, and with Jean confirming the League will follow his orders, Steve accepts, and they get to work on a capable vessel. Without masks, even bats. I guess it'd be the ultimate sign of trust, or a what do secret identities matter to people from another reality, or something. Anyway, an Atlantean ship is refitted, modulated, and linked to Vision's brain, enhanced by Green Lantern's power ring, with peak thrust and maneuverability. I'm just sorry we had to divert most of the cannon power to do it. I'm not. I don't much like guns.
And I'm just sorry we don't have time to make it look bat-shaped.
You know it's an Atlantean ship, right?
And it could have been a Batlantean ship!
The dimensional harmonics need to be right, which I think is code for we need some time for the heroes to have humble and or tense reflections on their mission. Wanda and Vision comfort each other. Pym continues to apologize to Jan for the disturbing concept of him ever hitting her, and Barry and Hal try to give each other solace in how capable their successors will be. That and the prospect of their inevitable devises after things revert to normal. Thor waxes to Aquaman about the mightiness that has been assembled, and figures he could take Supes in a fight now that he has a measure of them. And Big Blue meets with Cap, as requested, apologizing for his words, but hey, neither of them were themselves. After each shares their concerns about whether they do too much or too little for their respective worlds, Steve gets to why he called Superman over. The Kryptonian will be taking the brunt of the attacks, and Chrono will be too powerful even for him, and since Cap will be commanding from the ship, he gives Clark his iconic shield, to give him an extra edge.
Now, while I respect this gesture, and it makes sense that someone should use such a resourceful weapon if its owner isn't going to, Superman's invulnerable. Anything that Krona throws at him that could do him damage could potentially do the same for the shield, I would imagine. On the other hand, I guess being largely made of vibranium isn't exactly nothing, so I'm gonna roll with it.
It's officially go time, with Mjolnir powering Flash's cosmic treadmill, which Tony says wouldn't work on their world, and Wanda providing probability disruption. The ship is instantaneously brought to Krona's fortress, comprised of Galactus.
Krona may be insane, willing to destroy entire universes full of innocent lives on the chance to gain more knowledge, but at least he's sensible enough to recycle.
When alerted to their presence, Krona reserves most of his power for later, using some to enthrall a few of the weaker-minded denizens of their demimondes. There are a few definitions for that word. The only two that work in this context are basically saying that groups like the Cult of Cobra and AIM are morally questionable and terrible at what they do. So I guess he knows he's sending idiots into the fray. The ship lands, and before some shock troops from Apocalypse can make good on their boastfulness, both teams charge into battle with the classic battle cry.
Avengers, assemble!
And Justice League, lambast!
If only she wasn't so committed to the alliteration. She could have said something like, I don't know, Justice League action! And Cartoon Network would have only had her say it at 4:45 a.m. on Saturday mornings when no one's watching.
Jean mind-links Cap with everyone on the ground, coordinating their efforts where they'll be the most effective. Even when more threats arrive, he's calm and succinct with what needs to get done. Meanwhile, Superman seems really impressed with his borrowed shield, which I think is more of a respectful nod to Cap and the Marvelverse, as opposed to Supes actually needing the shield. Again, invulnerable. But moving on. Flash and Wasp discover a hastily built field wall, with gaps a single man could get through. A single Batman, to be precise, who's already heading through before Cap can give the order. That's our Batman! A sudden wave of chronal instability hits, changing some heroes, like Pym going from Goliath to Yellowjacket, and switches out others, like Aquaman and Wanda vanishing, with Hawkeye, Quicksilver, and Green Arrow in their stead. They're telepathically updated and Cap gets them to work, as the Royal Flush Gang appear to interrupt another back and forth between the Archers. Krona has apparently seized the avatars for the universes, and hasn't much time to get information from them before they're gone. He asks Metron for his aid, seeing as he's a fellow truth seeker, but he's like, nah. Even though he led Krona to the Avengers reality, the guy in the chair says Krona should honestly ask himself what he wants. Answers or conquest? In either case, Metron will be watching from elsewhere.
You would not believe the shows I still haven't deleted off my DVR, and I'm gonna need to make a lot of space for this.
Batman's disabled the field generator and lets Cap know to send the others through while he scouts ahead. But the chronal wave changing his costume distracts him long enough that he takes a kick from Batroc, the Leaper. The voice in my head, tells me you are a most skillful fighter. And Batroc, he loves to meet the skillful fighters. Let us see which of us is the most skillful, eh?
Oh, I don't have a joke for this. I just really wanted to do a cheesy French accent for this guy.
As new heroes are warped in, like Black Knight, Beast, Man's Plastic and Elongated, etc., Krona has stepped up his villain game by bringing in the likes of Screaming Mimi, Felix Faust, Baron Zemo, and more. Honestly, naming the heroes alone that appear in this fight would be a video unto itself. They've made it through 2 waves of defenses, and will keep fighting until they make it all the way to Krona. When Dream Slayer sees Flash rescue Hawkeye, and the two being all inspiring and devil-may-care, he attacks, seeming to vaporize them, leaving behind only Flash's costume and Hawk's quiver. Pretty sure that's Dream Slayer. He looks like the guy from Convergence of the Titans I reviewed months back, but no indication otherwise of who he is or what his powers exactly are, and they were pretty ambiguous in that other comic. Anyway, Cap tells his troops to keep going, and there'll be time to mourn later. An enraged Hal briefly changes to his Parallax form, then is switched out by Kyle Rayner, who is still running on Cosmic Cube energy, as he unleashes a barrage of construct missiles. Thor rallies everyone forward as Green Arrow, losing his own artillery earlier, opts to use Barton's, in memory of the man who was even more annoying than GA himself.
That reminds me, I need to update my will so that it includes the mandate for mourners to shoot each other with arrows. The ones with the suction cups. Honest.
Narration notes that as more enemies appear and their ranks swap or change, Cap compensates, his orders telepathically transmitted with precision. There's a fun moment with both publishers as Captain Marvels. See, they can get along. And for anyone wondering when Hulk would show up, here he is. But only until he's switched out. So, bummer for Hulk fans. Batman has just taken out Batroc. It's funny because they both begin with Bat. Anyway, he finds a small platoon of other challengers waiting, but is fortunately backed up by Black Panther, Huntress, and Black Widow. Meanwhile, Jean has vanished, and thus the mind link is gone. And that's when Captain America is faced with the villain Prometheus, having snuck onto the ship and downloaded Batman's fighting style into his brain. That'll be more than enough to defeat you. Oh, I'd never thought I'd do this thrice in one season, but... Krona finally gets what Metron was talking about. Since he's on the cusp of gaining knowledge he seeks, he finds it insufficient, so it turns out he's cuckoo for conquest. He wants payback on all the heroes, worlds, and universes that denied him so long. Because that's super rational. As the battle rages, now Electric Superman loses Cap's shield. I guess because Rogers himself was phased into a period where he had an energy-based replacement, which he uses while schooling Prometheus. Pre-programmed skills aren't much to a seasoned soldier, though if I'm being honest, it's not as elaborate a fight as I'd like to see between these two, given how much trouble Prometheus is shown to be for the DC heroes, and here he is getting taken down rather quickly because Cap's got a lot of focus. I do understand why. There's a lot going on, there are only so many pages left, and it could be argued Prometheus is more potentially cool than he has been in execution, but that's a discussion for another time. As villains fall and some ground is gained, Scarlet Witch reappears thanks to her magic, finding the trapped Eternity and Kismet, avatars for the Marvel and DC universes respectively, still in an embrace. Seriously, now is not the time for cosmic displays of affection. Wanda is trying to use chaos magic to keep more heroes on the field than villains, but time is running out as Krona bellows his manifesto of revenge. His citadel crumbles as the undersea barbarian Atuma and his forces threaten to overwhelm some heroes, until Aquaman shuts them down with his unique telepathy. It was a bit taxing, but at least now they only have giant cavemen to deal with.
Yes, cavemen. They haven't been featured much on those Geico commercials lately, and are still sore about that sitcom not taking off like they'd hoped, so they're plenty angry.
Wonder Woman takes out the giants and tells everyone to head inside while she faces, I'm gonna say, Surtur, with the aid of She-Hulk. Meanwhile, further in the fortress, Radioactive Man and Solar act on the advice of a bald guy who knew his stuff and attacked Superman with kryptonite and red sun energy simultaneously. A heavily damaged Vision uses the last of his solar reserves, infusing it into soups with red eye beams, giving Cal enough of a charge to take the foes down.
Which I find weird for a couple of reasons. One, if solar energy of the red variety reduces Clark to a powerless state, it would be possible that the kryptonite has no effect on him. At least that has been the case in other stories, other iterations. And why are Vision's beams red when Cal needs yellow sunlight? Is this where the story really falls apart? Going so strong up to now and then becoming unintelligible trash? I knew it! This is why I can't have nice things! I'm out of here! At least I would be if I had anywhere else to go. You're lucky I have no life.
With those villains disposed of, Superman stands at the last barrier protecting Krona, but unable to get past it, until an overwhelmed Thor lends him Mjolnir. And he deals the energized wall a strike most mighty, then gets tossed back by something on the other side, specifically an armored and well-prepared Krona, powered by the artifacts in his containment orb. He mocks them for their futile efforts, as villains do, and prepares to watch the universes make out to death, until he notices a red blur at his feet and a purple arrow crashing into the vessel from which he draws his power. Turns out Barry managed to narrowly get himself and Clint to safety from Dreamslayer's attack. Somehow. And under Cap's orders, they waited for the right moment to strike, with the TNT arrow. And I guess Barry had a spare ring on him since his costume was left behind, or he put it back on while everyone was too distracted by the battle. I'd rather not think of alternative contexts for him being called the Flash, so the artifacts, Krona, and the universes are caught up in a kind of energy whirlwind, culminating in a blinding flash of light, and Hawkeye fades away. Looks like that's put an egg beater in his gym shorts.
Egg beater in his gym shorts? Note to self. New revenge torture method.
Wally West is back as Flash, and as everyone's bodies are back to what they were, the only ones who remain, according to Rayner, are the ones that were around when this all started. Though they may have lost some people, reality is reordering itself, so the ordeal is at least complete. Until the Dark Knight Killjoy points out some more commotion in the direction of the two Earths they've been fighting to save. Again, two hands appear, but this time they're green and pushing them apart. It's the Spectre, Hal Jordan, returning to help out even in his present state. As Superman mourns Vision, who can get fixed up, robot, it's time to hightail it, since the realities are rebuilding themselves, and that includes the restoration of Galactus. Ever the neighborly farm boy, Clark grabs Mjolnir to hand it back to its owner, but can't lift it. Thor mentions the enchantment on it, where only a few worthies could wield it in desperate hours.
What? I know the whole worthy thing has applied to only a few people, but you're telling me Superman doesn't qualify as worthy? We're not talking DC movies Superman or one affected by red kryptonite, but really? Not Superman? Was there some addendum put on the hammer just before this story that I don't know about?
As the heroes return to their worlds, trading respect and salutes, the universe's destructive relationship comes to an end, and they promise they'll totally stay in touch, but really don't. In an empty void, the Grand Master is revealed to have been revived from the hero's victory, and it turns out the whole adventure was part of a game he was playing with Metron, and in a first, it seems all sides have won. Gast the game, heroes the battle, and Krona may well find the answers he seeks, as the comic ends on a cosmic egg containing his essence, and whatever hatches from it will be closely monitored by Metron, and perhaps he and Grandmaster will do this again. Someday.
And that was JLA Avengers. And it was an entertaining read through and through.
I can't find anything particularly wrong with the art. It was consistently detailed and wonderful. It managed to blend a contemporary feel and classic vibes all at the same time, which is what you want if you're going to have characters swapping out like they did. And they were written well, their interactions great, and even smaller elements like Plastic Man's antics were always fun. Each chapter is more than 45 pages, and they use each and every one effectively. Nothing feels like filler, even the 2-page spreads, which sometimes read like one long single page. In terms of art and story, everything felt like this is what it needed to be for this story. And I can't say that about a lot of stories, even ones I like.
There are details I didn't really get into, not simply because of episode runtime, but it's something you have to experience for yourself. From the quiet, personal moments that humanize these characters, to the big fight at the end where you're looking for each iteration, each costume, each member of the legacy as they switch in and out as an homage to where they came from and where they are.
It's probably one of the most solid stories I've reviewed thus far, but it did have a few head-scratchers, mostly in issue 4, but in other areas. Not just stuff like Superman saying he's apologizing again when we never read him apologizing the first time, like how Diana's lasso could get the truth, but not the whole truth. It would kind of make sense if the Grand Master is super powerful, but it made a little less sense with Sonar. Or even if you couldn't forgive Superman needing Cap's shield, there was the deal with Mjolnir and his fight against Solar and Radiation Man. Some of that just seemed off to me. It's possible they didn't want to make him too powerful on his own, so he could require aid from his Marvel peers, which, given the scale they're going up against, is kind of understandable. In a lot of ways, it's much like the DC vs. Marvel crossover from several years before, even though they don't seem to acknowledge it or regard it as canon. Characters swap universes, the universes merge for a brief time, but no Crystal Bros or Access, for better or worse. And that little hint at the end of Metron saying maybe they'll do this again, I wouldn't count on it. I think this was the last crossover by DC and Marvel, and that may be because, if certain rumors are true, and keep in mind I'm saying they're rumors, that the two companies aren't exactly seeing eye to eye. Just as well because I shudder to think of what would be wrought by certain creators at a certain publisher.
In short, this is a highly recommended story, and you should check it out for yourself, especially if you have an affinity for both of the big two. So that does it for this season of Taking Issue, and the end of Year of the Crossover. Thanks for watching, and if you can't wait until January for more episodes, you can refresh yourself with episodes you haven't seen yet. Or watch Glove and Boots in the meantime. I know I will. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.